WCLN 1170 Radio and Cable Channel 16 are pleased to present We Should Know, hosted by J.W. Simmons, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative as we consider closely what we should know.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. J.W. Simmons here, your host. The name of the show is We Should Know, a weekly show that comes on air to you on WCLN Radio. Also, we're aired on TV, Star Communications Channel 16. Different subjects, different people each and every week about information, things you need to know. This week, we're talking with Sergeant Matthew Parrish with the North Carolina Wildlife Commission. Matthew, thank you for being with us.
Glad to be here.
And we also have John Henry Harrelson, who is the District Wildlife Biologist. John Henry, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
The subjects that we're going to get into today is something people a lot of times don't think about, but each and every day in a rural area, in a small town, even large towns, we fail to realize we live in an area where there are critters of all kinds in the wooded areas, even in parks that exist. And the Wildlife Commission and the biologists have to have oversight of that to understand what they're doing. And I'll start with you, Matthew, that the idea that your job is just enforcement, sometimes I think people get caught up in the wrong mindset. You have a lot of other issues that you're looking at as it relates to safety, as it relates to what animals are migrating and those kinds of things. Let's kind of go in that area and just kind of give people oversight of what your responsibilities are.
Okay, so, people think automatically when they see a wildlife officer or a game warden, I'm here to check somebody, I'm here to write a ticket. Well, we do, so much more than that. It depends upon the time of the year too. But one thing that we do also is we do education. We teach free hunter safety and boating safety courses. Again, depending on the time of the year. You can find that information on our website, and we teach them in each county. So the officers in your county throughout the year will be teaching a hunter safety or a boating safety course. And we want people to be able to go out and enjoy hunting, fishing, boating, or trapping safely and in the manner prescribed by law. And we don't want anyone to, get hurt while they're doing such. Again, our job is not just education. Again, it's enforcement. But another thing that people don't understand that we do is we actually investigate. Say if there's a hunting accident or a boating accident, say you're out on the boat and you run into another boat, somebody runs into you, we investigate those hunting accidents and boating accidents also. And we, determine if it was truly an accident or if it was some type of negligence involved or someone was at fault.
And a lot of times people probably don't even think about it. I would have suspected in some of those accident situations that occurs, there's also an insurance derivative in that where folks may say, well, if I don't get it inspected by a professional and a report written, there may be an issue.
There's a lot of people that they call us and they're like, hey, my boat got damaged. I need to get this report done so that I can turn it over to my insurance. So, we do that also.
John Henry, one of the things I want to kind of segue to you, because when I think about biologists, I think about microbes, I think about diseases, I think about all kinds of things that maybe a lot of us don't realize, but we might have in kind with animals that live in the wood line.
Yeah. I deal a lot with disease, like you mentioned. Recently, we've been focusing on CWD or chronic wasting disease in our area. But prior to CWD, a big portion of my job was helping people who have negative human-wildlife interactions. So folks who have issues with wildlife, who have negative encounters, whether it's just seeing an animal and they feel afraid or they're unsure, finding something dead, an animal having an interaction in their house or with their pet. I spend a lot of time doing those things, educating the public about those issues, talking about people or educating about coexisting. And then, like you said, recently we found chronic wasting disease last February in the area. And since then, that's been a big focus for us. And
that typically is important in the ability for that disease to transfer from one, particularly deer population, from one animal to another. Is it something that when you look at it, does it do away? Has it got the potential of spreading and rapidly reducing the deer population? But there's not really an impact to humans, is there?
Yeah, that's a real complex question there. So human impact from chronic wasting disease right now is still pretty unsure. CDC says you shouldn't eat an animal with a neurological disease. So cows have mad cow disease, sheep have scabies, deer have chronic wasting disease, and people have this Crutchfield-Yakavich disease, which they're all related. They're all TSE diseases, transospongiform encephalophysis diseases. They're all related. But as far as human issues, we haven't seen a crossover into people yet, but that doesn't mean it can't happen. So we always practice caution in those issues. As far as the deer population and its impact on deer, deer, once the disease is here, it's here. The disease is a prion. It doesn't live. It doesn't eat. It's a building block of life. So you pretty much can't destroy it besides with really excessive temperatures. Which means it can live in the soil, it can be in plants, it can just be on the landscape for a deer to come by and pick it up and then in turn be impacted from this prion. Deer are naturally social creatures. They lick each other, they feed each other, or feed with each other. There's constant grooming among each other. So we know deer are going to spread it amongst themselves because they spread it through saliva, through droppings, through urine. But then we don't want people to spread it. And people spread it by moving carcasses across the landscape. It's found in, a lot of times, the body parts wise, it's found in the eyes, in the spinal column, in the lymph nodes, in the skull, in the brains, things that people don't eat anyway, because I don't know many people eat deer brains, but the backbone of a deer, but we take it out there and we throw it on the landscape, or we kill a deer and then we take it back home 30 miles away, and then we go to someone else's place and dispose of it, or dispose of it illegally along the roadway or waterway, and then in turn we're spreading that disease artificially.
I think that's just an interesting point to start with here, and I'll just toss this out as a part of the conversation to both of you. What do we do? Because I've noticed just recently, over the past few months, especially during, I don't know why it's kind of like during deer season, but there seems to be more deer and vehicle impacts going on. And you see deer, as you just pointed out, John Henry, lay them beside the road where somebody maybe has hit it with a car or a truck and just decided, well, not to stop, and I'm going to drive on there as a deer. What are we supposed to do, Matthew, in that situation?
As far as
a vehicle hitting a deer, is that something that is specifically related to road officers that enforce traffic, or is that something that folks need to understand that Wildlife Commission wants you to clean that deer up and bury it or do something with it, or does DOT do it? So
there's a couple different answers to that question. Number one, if you have an accident, of course you're going to contact the highway patrol or local police department, municipality, because they're going to do wreck reports. But say if you hit the deer, or you're driving down the road and you're like, hey, there's a deer that was hit. I'd like to get that deer and take it home and eat it. There's a lot of people that actually call us during this time of year, especially when it's cool or cold days. They'll find a fresh deer that was hit by a car, recently deceased, and they'll call us, hey, we'd like a roadkill permit. So we actually do that too. We're able to salvage those people are able to get a permit from us. They're able to salvage the meat, and the deer just doesn't sit there beside the road and rot and go to waste. But now, say it just sits there for a while, a lot of times DOT is the one who comes along and they're going to pick it up off the side of the road. But all that kind of leads back to the reason you're seeing this time of year so much is because it's pretty much the peak of the mating season for the deer. The deer are out moving around, doing their thing, mating, and they're just on the move constantly this time of year. So that's the big reason for the increase in the motor vehicle wrecks with deer.
I've often heard that there's a natural migration that typically in an area, maybe you hadn't seen a lot of one particular animal. If you start seeing a lot of those animals, then typically there's another animal that comes along that follows that animal. It's like a natural feeding system or something. Is that true? I mean, for example, if you have deer, do you ultimately end up with bobcats, and from bobcats you end up with some other animal, or do you see it just completely different than that?
Well, on the landscape, there's a predator-prey relationship that's in constant flux. And so if we're just focusing on deer, humans are the major predator of deer. We're the main consumer on the landscape. The only other things that occasionally kill deer are coyotes, bobcats kill fawns, and black bears. Mm-hmm. So bears do kill deer as well. So nothing else is really having a huge impact on the population besides humans. Now, if we look at other predator-prey relationships, like say rabbits, there's that age-old lynx and hare relationship, whereas the lynx population increases. As the hare population increases, so does the lynx. The hare population crashes, those are rabbits, and then in turn the lynx population crashes. That happens in across the landscape as well. Wildlife respond to additional resources. Take for instance coyotes. When a coyote moves into a new area, there's abundant resources. The female may have 7 to 10 pups, mm-hmm. versus a female in a population where she's fighting for territory and there's limited resources. She only may have 2 or 3 pups because of the impact on her and then the likelihood of survival.
Yeah, this is kind of fascinating. I think, Matthew, at least to me, is that we've got this environment and we see, I guess, the woods line, but a lot of times we make assumptions that there's certain animals not there. There's certain things that we don't have to worry about. I'm going to kind of toss this out as something that I'd like to add to the conversation. We might have to take a break and then come back to it. But let's talk about a bit some of the things that are there that maybe we don't necessarily see but still exist in the landscape, whether it's bear, deer, cat creatures, I'll call them. Yeah. I think that would be interesting. So we're like at that point to take a break. We're going to take a break. When we come back, I want folks to stay with us because we're going to look behind that wood line and let you tell us what we could expect to see or what we might see crossing our human path. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We'll be back in a moment. We're talking about wildlife, creatures beyond the wood line that you might not know is there, but could be there near your house. We'll be back in a moment.
Providing fewer commutes, more backyard offices, and crystal clear meetings. Providing less, you froze up, and more presence in your presentations. Providing a better internet experience. Providing possible.
You're out for an evening on the town. Finally a chance to relax and forget that you left your front door completely unlocked. Fortunately, you just installed a security system from Star Communications. With just your cell phone, you can check on your house, lock it down, light it up, and get back to relaxing.
You forgot to put Buster in his crate.
Unfortunately, we can't help with that. Security and automation from Star Communications. Call today to find out more.
Honey, do we pay our bill?
What bill?
The Star Communications bill.
No worries, honey. With Star's paperless billing and automatic draft system, I get a notification sent right to my phone. There's no need to be bothered with those paper statements, and our bill is paid on time every month.
Well, that's easy and convenient.
It sure is, honey.
Honey?
Yes, dear.
The bake.
Oh, right.
If you run a business, you need sales. To get sales, you need customers. To get customers, you need exposure. Let our team of experts craft and produce the perfect video ad to reach your intended audience while making the most of your advertising dollars. Call 1-800-706-6538 or visit starcom.net to contact our Star Communications production team and get your business moving to the next level.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know's on there. Thank you for being with us. We're talking about things beyond the wood line today. We're talking about wildlife and the people that see things, explains things for us, and hopefully will help us understand what's going on during that woods line. We have with us Sergeant Matthew Parrish, and we also have John Henry Harrelson, who is the wildlife district biologist, District 4. Both you guys get all kinds of questions, I'm sure. Oh, yeah, so when we look at our typical, should I say, areas that we travel as human beings, whether you live on a farm, whether you live in the town limits or whatever it may be, behind that wood line, there's a whole nother world of, I'll call them critters, creatures, and it could be turtles, it could be whatever, but they're living there. And there's times we interact with it, and sometimes probably these animals are near us. When I say near, within feet of us, and we don't even know it. Help us understand what's in those woods lines. I'll start with either one of them.
Well, I mean, a lot of people, we get calls throughout the year about people calling, especially one thing in the cities. Okay, I see a fox. He's running around in the daylight. There's not necessarily anything wrong with that. We tell a lot of people at times to, just leave it alone. If you got any food sources outside, remove those, and more than likely they'll move on. You won't see them again. Another thing a lot of people don't realize that are around these parts a lot is black bear. We actually have a large population of black bear in our Sampson and Bladen counties. There's a lot of people that hunt them, but people don't realize, what's behind their house in the woods. A couple years ago, my dad had a trail camera out in his backyard, during, I think it was in the summer, going on in transition in the fall, and he has a black bear walk by the trail camera through the edge of the yard. So a lot of people don't realize what's in the woods behind your house, but it's nothing to be alarmed about. They're just moving about in their day-to-day activities, trying to eat, looking for food, foraging, etc.
And one of the things that strikes me, Matthew, is that when people see that, you don't really hear a lot about it. But if it happens in Raleigh or some of the big cities, and we've seen, it blows up big time, and media picks up on it, and it's like it's some unbelievable anomaly is occurring, but yet it's been there all the time. Somebody just happened to catch it on camera. So how should we react, John Henry, to that thing that we see and we go, oh my God, make sure the children don't go out. We can't play in the yard anymore. Let's, and you panic. What should we do?
Well, that shouldn't be crossing your mind. Most wildlife, and almost all wildlife, have an innate fear of people. People are bad. They've learned that people are bad. They don't want anything to do with people. The only time that really changes is when people give wildlife food. Everything's looking for an easy meal, whether it's the songbird, whether it's the bear, whether it's the fox, or a deer, whatever is in your yard that you may be worried about or concerned about, it's likely there because there's food around. Mm-hmm. So if you remove the food, like Matthew was saying, you take away the trash, you clean up your food scraps, you don't feed your dog outside, or when you do, you pick up the leftover food, most of the time you're going to avoid all the wildlife issues. The other time wildlife like to come around people is after dark, which is, when folks are mostly inside. And so we've relegated a lot of animals to moving at nighttime that would typically move other times. But, it's not unusual to see foxes walking through your yard, raccoons, bears, all those animals, all those critters live around here.
The feeding thing strikes me, and then I think it's something folks need to understand too. You guys don't recommend feeding a deer. This is not Bambi, the cartoon on TV, and you're going to feed the little deer, and then you got a friend and you keep them. That's actually illegal, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Yeah, you're not supposed to have any wildlife in captivity or as a pet. I mean, there's a reason for that.
Yeah. In addition, feeding wildlife, so you can, people feed deer all the time. People bait deer, at least right now. It's legal during hunting season. People bait bears. But I can tell you those animals have been making it on their own for thousands and thousands of years without people putting food resources out there for them. Most of the time, we're putting out something out there for them to make us feel good so we can see them. But it's really not helping the animal in the grand scheme of things. People think, you feed a deer corn. A deer eats 5 to 6 pounds of browse a day. He's eating plant material 5 to 6 pounds a day. When he comes and eats at your corn pile for 20 minutes, he's not eating 5 and 6 pounds of corn. And in turn, he can't even digest that anyway. So you're just, lots of times we're giving wildlife the ice cream at the end of the meal, and we're not giving them the steak and potatoes that they need along the way. So I discourage people from feeding wildlife in general. If you want to see more wildlife, if you have property and want to do something, plant native plants. Manage the habitat that's there where the animals live at, and in turn, you will have more wildlife if that's what your goal is.
Do you get calls with bizarre kinds of things, and when you get the call, you think this is not going to pan out? And do you reverse? Do you sometimes get a call and you think, well, that animal can't be in this area because it's not native to the area, but then there's the animal? Do you have both of those happen?
I think probably one of the most common things that we have is, it happens every year, multiple times a year. We have somebody that says, hey, I've got a black cat with a long tail on my camera, or I know a guy that got a photo of one. And that's probably the biggest thing every year. Probably every wildlife officer and every biologist in the state gets a call about, I've got a black panther on camera. And I know John Henry can probably give a lot more detail on that, but that's probably one of the most common things we deal with. There's always something that comes along and like, no, there's no way that such and such can, there's an alligator in the creek down in Taylor's Bridge. There's no way there's an alligator down there. And you get down there and sure enough, there's an alligator there. Mm-hmm. So, there are some anomalies, but most of the time, if somebody calls to report something, a Bigfoot or a black panther, it doesn't pan out.
Well, you guys work, you work the whole district, and you've got 2 counties here that you supervise. Are there animals, for example, in Bladen County that you typically just do not see in, say, the northern part of Sampson County?
I would say probably one of them that you might not see a lot. We can probably talk about this in depth, is probably the alligator. We see him in Bladen County. We've seen them up towards E-Town. They're just coming up the Cape Fear River, especially times when the water's real high. They'll come up. We've had them in Sampson County, southern Sampson County. I've never seen them in the northern part of Sampson, but I do know them to be in the southern region because I've seen them myself. Mm-hmm. I've seen one near Taylor's Bridge, near the rest area, one in that creek. Mm-hmm. It wasn't too far down past that, near Delway Community, that I actually saw one. And a big problem we had with that one was he was right beside the roadway, and people were going down there and they had a path wore down beside the road. We were even down there that day, and there was a guy coming around with a weed eater, and he was weed eating all the trees and stuff so that people could pull up their car and look down and see the alligator. And then people were coming and they were feeding the alligator subs, pork ribs, donuts. We had one guy pull down there and he was telling us, he's like, he loves donuts. And we're like, you're not supposed to be feeding him, because that alligator was getting used to those people feeding him every day, and he was staying right there. And at some point, that alligator is going to associate people with food, and if a person comes along maybe doesn't have a bag of his favorite donuts, he might go after him.
He might think that they are his donuts.
That's right. He might think they're his donuts.
Wow. What causes creatures like alligators in the migration process, based on what Matthew was just telling Sean Henry? Yeah. Is there an expectation that alligators will be seen more in the county and Kahari and some of the streams and so forth that runs through the county?
I won't say see more. So alligators, along with like black bears, pretty much any species, is looking to expand into new areas, especially when things are going good. So when populations are going good, there's always that competition for good habitat or for prime spots. And you got young alligators or young bears or young wildlife in general who don't have that hierarchy, who can't maintain those prime spots. So in turn, they get pushed out and they disperse and are looking for new areas. So that's how we get alligators. We have alligators in Fayetteville. That's how we get bears. The Cape Fear River is a big travel corridor. Mm-hmm. Bears use that corridor, so do other wildlife. But yeah, that's how it usually causes a problem when someone gets involved with food. And
should we look at streams and rivers? And you mentioned Cape Fear a number of times, and I'm thinking Little Kahari and what is it, Six Runs and different streams. Mm-hmm. Should we look at those as roadways for wildlife, like we look at I-40 or 95? Is that kind of, do they follow that as a path?
You should look at if you zoom out and look at aerial photography, those waterways are the only places we have left for wildlife to move, to have cover. there's legislation that stops people from cutting trees within, you have to leave a buffer on waterways. You have to leave a buffer on creeks, on swamps, on moving water. And oftentimes, if you look, we don't farm those areas. That's where farming stops. So that's where wildlife are left to move. So yeah, they're big time travel routes and big time travel corridors. You mentioned migration. We don't have many animals here, at least land mammals that migrate. In fact, we don't have any. The thing that we have here that migrates would be birds. So, we have neotropical migrants, so little songbirds. And then we also, ducks and geese would be the other things that migrate, that come and go. Everything else we have pretty much stays here the whole year.
So basically we can kind of anticipate that unless there's a big change, maybe floods or something of that nature that causes a big rise in the water or so forth, we're going to see things pretty much stable where it is now. The big thing I'm seeing over my lifetime is that black bear movement. Mm-hmm. It seems that has occurred. I want to kind of expand on some of those things maybe that we've missed when we come back from this break. And then I want to try to get into something that's just basically popped up on the radar that's been there for a long time. And that's the whole idea of safety as it relates to wildlife, safety as it relates to guns and that kind of thing, and kind of help people understand why this firearms issue is so critically important in a world that just about everybody has a rifle or a shotgun or something. So I think it's going to be a good conversation coming back. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We're going to talk about some issues that is really affecting your life each and every day as it relates to wildlife and the Wildlife Commission. We'll be back in a moment.
For the ultimate Wi-Fi experience, you need whole home Wi-Fi from Star Communications. Star's whole home Wi-Fi provides ultimate coverage, ultimate performance, and ultimate power all the time. Star's whole home Wi-Fi systems feature the latest Wi-Fi 6 technology and are equipped with unrivaled bandwidth and 4 times more simultaneous connections. So you can connect tons of devices throughout your home with no lag and no downtime. Plus, with 24/7 support and remote troubleshooting, you can rest assured that Star is always there to help you should any issues arise. Star's whole home Wi-Fi also comes with the Command IQ mobile app, putting you in control of your home network and making it easy to set up and connect devices, run network speed tests, pause Wi-Fi, and set parental controls all from the palm of your hand. It's the ultimate Wi-Fi experience. Contact Star today to get started.
Let's get out of here.
Protect what matters most in your life with security from Star Communications.
105.7. 105.7. Tuning into Christian 105.7 is tuning in to a space of hope, encouragement, answers, and love. With the magic of radio or the convenience of the internet, Christian 105.7 is focused on sharing the universal truth and light of Christ with a local touch that creates that special feeling of community. More than just another broadcast station, we're your neighbors. Christian 105.7. What faith sounds like.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know's on there. We're talking about wildlife today. We're talking about those things, those critters that are around you and sometimes you don't even know it. And two people that know more about that than anybody I know is Sergeant Matthew Parrish and John Henry Harrelson. John Henry, you're the District 4 biologist, and Matthew, you've got Bladen and Duplin County.
Bladen and Sampson.
But Bladen and Sampson County you supervise. You don't get any part of Duplin.
Well, we work all over. I will say that. There's no telling on a.
But your primary areas are Bladen and Sampson.
Yes.
And I think the thing that strikes me, and I appreciate so much you calling me, and so we can talk about some of these issues. And it's so critically important. John Henry, we were talking about this idea of what people see sometimes, what they think they see might not be a reality, but we've got more and more cameras that people are using. Mm-hmm. We didn't have this problem. Now if something shows up on my camera, I'm going to want to know what it is. Is it okay to call you guys and say, can you look at this for me?
Sure.
Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah. You can reach out to us. We also have a HWI hotline, a human wildlife interaction hotline that's manned by biologists in Raleigh. That's 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, and they're there to answer questions that folks have about wildlife and about issues. And that, can I give out that phone number?
Mm-hmm.
It's 866-318-2401. And so there's 3 to 4 biologists there all the time to answer calls. And, we talked about it earlier. We mentioned black panthers. I wanted to just touch back on that with you, because that's a big topic that we get calls about all the time. So the big cat that we have native to North America is Puma concolor. It's a mountain lion. It's a Florida panther. It's a cougar. They're all the same thing. That's all the exact same species.
So those names are just one critter.
Yeah, they're all one. Yeah, they're all one critter. There has never been a black one killed or reported in North America. So there's never been one in a museum. There's never been a photo of one documented. There's never been proof that there's been a solid black one killed. Now in South America, they have jaguars, and jaguars can be black, can be melanistic. But our cougar or panther that lives here naturally, if one were to ever disperse here in the closest population that we have, or in Florida, if a wild one were to ever disperse here, it wouldn't be black. So if you're seeing a black cat on your camera or a black object, it's probably not a big cat. It's probably a dog or otter or something else that you're seeing, bobcat or just a black house cat. There's something else going on. But if you have questions about trail cams, we'd be glad to take a look and offer some assistance with those photos.
You've actually got calls, Matthew, where people have seen things like that.
Oh, yeah. I've had people call. I mean, it's normally several times a year somebody will call, text you, hey, I got this cat on camera. And if you really look at it, in my opinion, you look at it and it's nothing more than a bobcat. Somebody's got a photo of a bobcat, either, really close to their trail cameras. Oh, man, it's a big cat. And, you can't see every feature on the bobcat clearly, but that's what it is.
Well, is it hard to convince people? I mean, even after you look at it, and you say, okay, here's the thing. Does folks walk away still believing they've seen one?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I mean, there's people I've talked to before, people I know very well. It's like, nope, that's bobcat, that black panther doesn't exist here. No, y'all are wrong. No, I've seen it, or I know somebody that's got a photo of it, and people will not believe you.
Cats live out west, so there's a bunch of mountain lions that live out west. People may not necessarily see them all the time, but they see tracks. They found their kills. They find poop. They find scratches on trees. There's every wildlife, every animal leaves sign behind, and we don't find that sign. We haven't had big cat tracks. We haven't seen a kill site of a big panther or a big cat that we can confirm. And we investigate those things. I mean, if it's legitimate, we go out and we look and investigate. And because I'd like to be the first one to find it. I'm not gonna lie. I can make you famous.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll be on your show talking about black panthers.
Please do that. Call us if you do, and we'll try to get out here and get some footage of that. Yeah. I think the other thing that interests me, a lot of times you'll hear, sometimes hunters will say, well, the only thing, in fact, I've actually heard this, the only thing they say, well, like, I know that there's something going on because we had a dog that was one of our hunting dogs completely annihilated and cut up, and it had to be a big cat. Not necessarily. There's creatures out there that you mentioned bears a while ago, and dogs, they don't get along with. So that's possible, but not necessarily a cat.
Yeah. Bears and dogs don't get along. And then also just recently I went and investigated an issue in Robinson County where a guy swore a cat was there and killed his dog. We talked about that. Then he was positive it was a bear. Turned out it was other dogs. So we go and investigate stuff all the time like that, putting the pieces together, figuring out, based off tooth wear or bite patterns or the kill site, different things, different evidence that leads us to be able to make those come out with some kind of answer to the question, or at least a logical answer.
I want to circle back to bears too, just because we talked about this with alligators, that most of the alligators in the southern end of the county and in Bladen County. The bear population, however, I think that has been pretty much legitimized, that we have that all over the state, and particularly in Sampson, in the northern part of Sampson County, we've been seeing more and more of those bear spottings. Is that factual?
Yeah, that's correct. I was talking to a gentleman this morning over in the Turkey community of the county, and he had some bear that he had on camera. I mean, it's pretty common now. The first time in my lifetime, I live in the Kitty Fork community, and I saw a bear that got hit by a car a month or two ago, and that's the first time I've ever seen that. So more and more we're seeing the bear in the northern part of the county, and it could be, based off they're just out moving, finding more territory, and there's other factors too. The northern part of the county is really growing. Yeah. There's a lot of building going on. A lot of the land that they were able to stay in, it was their home, they're being pushed out now. There's homes being built, land's being cleared. So there's different factors as to why we're seeing more bear. Again, the human population is growing, but also their population seems to be growing.
Yep. So as that population grows and the bear population and this building that we see going on, in fact, Wake County is, I tell people, it's pushing through Johnston into northern Sampson. As we see this, are we going to literally visually see more bear on the road and in front of us?
Maybe not in front of you, but you'll definitely see more bears involved in car accidents.
Because they're going to be more proliferating in that area.
A lot of the bears we're seeing are young bears out exploring, who aren't used to being in the areas and may not know this, it may be the first time they ever walked into this spot and are crossing the road for the first time or crossing this road for the first time and aren't aware of where they are in those issues. We kill 50 to 60 bears in Sampson County every year. Hunters do. Right now, I think we're at 51 as of this morning that have been harvested in the last 3 weeks since bear season came in, which is right on par with last season, which was an increase from the previous 5 seasons. This increased every year. So we've had an increase in bear harvest, and we've obviously had an increase in issues, more issues in Clinton this summer than we've had in the past. 2 summers ago, we had bears and trees in Clinton. The big issue is more human bear interactions that are going to be negative. Folks are just going to have to be more cognizant and we have a program called Bear Wise, and be more bear wise, in thinking about how should I deal with my food? How should I deal with my pets? Because there is an animal out here that maybe not have been here before, or maybe not, I'm not used to living beside. So in turn, I need to be more aware and change my behavior to coexist with that animal.
Do you see, of course, we've got a lot of hog operations and chicken operations throughout the landscape in Sampson and Bladen. Do you see bear involve themselves into the waste where they're throwing, dead chickens out into bins? Is that a feeding site, or do they stay away from that?
No, most of our issues around hog and chicken farms are their feed sites, where the food comes out of the bin and then into the house. Bears come up there and pretty much wreck that piece of metal, and then feed falls on the ground and they're gorging themselves on that food. They're not too interested in that nasty carcass that's been bloated for 3 or 4 days in the summertime.
So they're picky about what they eat.
Well, there's a lot of options on the landscape. It's not hard to be a bear in southeastern North Carolina. I'm gonna be honest. Eastern North Carolina grows the biggest black bears in the world. We have bears that are regularly 800 pounds, get killed every year.
800-pound bear.
In Eastern North Carolina, Dare, Hyde County, down here in this part of the state, 500-600 pound bear is a regular harvest here. That takes a lot of food for that animal to sustain that, and he's not getting it from a dead hog that they're chunking out. There's other factors that are leading him to be able to maintain that weight.
I've got to ask this question because I'm sure I'm going to get it if I don't. Is there some way you can put out something that will repel bears from coming around your house?
Electric fence.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah, if you have an issue where where a bear particularly is coming up and damaging food resources, and that goes for bees, people who have beehives, people who have small gardens, people who have blueberries and they don't want them picking, a small electric fence, a bear encounters that one time, they are very perceptive of pain, and they're pretty smart critters.
So they don't come back. If they hit it one time, most likely they're going to approach it anymore.
Yeah. We tell people that is the number one solution to a bear issue in a small area. If it's like a beehive, put an electric fence up and you'll save yourself some issues.
Wow. I'm just trying to wrap my head around a 600-pound bear here, guys. I'm just saying. And the kind of quick thing before we go to break here. you mentioned off air a while ago, making a lot of noise and so forth is a way also to get a bear away from you, and do not startle the creature. So if you see a bear, don't just keep going towards him. Just make a lot of noise and back away.
Yeah, that goes for most wildlife. You don't want to approach or corner any kind of wildlife, and for bears particularly, you don't want to corner or approach them if you can. You want to let them know you're there, and for the most part, they're going to move off, and you won't even have a chance to see them if they know you're coming ahead enough time.
We're going to take another break, and when we come back, I want to talk about the idea. If you've heard this show, folks have listened to what you said, and they decide, well, maybe I hadn't been, but I want to walk around in the landscape. I want to be a hunter, but I'm going to carry my gun with me in case I see something that I'm scared of. I'm going to shoot it. Let's talk about some of the rules and regulations, okay? Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We're talking about wildlife, the critters that live in the woods, how you interact with it. We'll be back in a moment.
Eastern North Carolina is a beautiful place where we gladly choose to call home, and we strive to provide the best communications services. STAR is committed to improving communications to all our service areas because we want to improve the communities where we not only work, but also live. STAR Communications. We are neighbors serving neighbors.
Just because something may work doesn't mean it's right for your business. Let STAR Communications' knowledgeable consultants help you customize a hosted voice system that's right for you. Our dedicated experts work with you to understand your business needs and guide you at every step, from choosing and installing services to ongoing maintenance and support. Contact STAR today.
Welcome back, folks. We're coming on the last part of the show. The name of the show is We Should Know if you're just tuning in. I'm J.W. Simmons, your host. Our guest today is Sergeant Matthew Parrish. He is a sergeant with the Wildlife Commission and covers Bladen and Sampson County. We also have the District 4 biologist with us, who is John Henry Harrelson. I want to start back with you, John Henry, to talk a bit more about this wasting disease that we're seeing in the deer population. Tell us more about that, and if we can get kind of caught up with that as it relates to how we might see it, what we need to report, whether you're a hunter or even if you're not a hunter, is that possible, and how do we report that?
Sure. The big thing about chronic wasting disease is we're just looking for where it's at. We're interested in where it is on the landscape, so we can better manage around there. Not necessarily because we're going to change the way an individual hunts on their property. If we find a positive on your place, or you shoot a deer and it's a positive, we're not coming to your property to kill every deer on it. We're not going to take your meat. You can give it to us if you don't want to consume it. We're not going to take your trophy. Like if you kill a buck, we're not going to come and take the antlers from you. Really, we just want to know what happened and, follow up so we can let other folks know, because other people in the area know that, hey, if you shoot a deer here, you may want to get it tested. So right now in our area, we just have positives in Cumberland County. And we've been surveying Cumberland and all the counties around it, all season. It's our first season of doing this, and so far we've only found less than a handful of additional positives in anticipated areas, still in Cumberland County. So we're going forward, we're still thinking about not moving carcasses. We're still thinking about being cognizant of when we feed and when we don't feed, and just how we move deer across the landscape.
And all of these things is everybody's responsibility to report that, because there's no way you're going to know it unless somebody picks the phone up, calls, and says, I've just encountered this deer. Does that even include deer that maybe has been hit by vehicles or something? Do you want to look at those?
Deer, well, we do test deer that have been hit by vehicles. The biggest thing for us, we want public help with, involves, if you're a hunter, just, donating your head for us to test. We have freezers set up across the county. We have taxidermists who pull samples for us. We have processors who pull samples for us. Pretty much, if you live in the surveillance area, you've got, I think there's like 50 something options.
Mm-hmm.
There's 38 freezers across the space spread out. You got one within about 15 minutes of you. The other thing we need help with, besides just hunters giving us those heads so we can test them, are folks who see sick deer. Not a deer that's got warts, but a deer that's drooling, that's uncoordinated, that's walking around in a circle, that's really emaciated. Those are things that we're interested in seeing, because that could be this disease. It could be something completely different.
Mm-hmm.
But those deer, we're definitely interested in getting and testing and figuring out what's going on. And we do that for lots of wildlife.
If somebody sees a deer with just the signs you just described, if they literally see that out their window, do you want them to call and indicate to you what they saw?
Yes, 100%. You can either call that number I gave earlier, our HWI hotline. You can call our wildlife enforcement dispatch. If you have my phone number or officer's phone number, call us, shoot us a text, send me a video. My phone number is public knowledge, so I get all kinds of inquiries about stuff.
And we
want to know.
We'll list those numbers on the site when this show airs, so folks can have a grasp of that. And because a lot of times they don't remember if we give it out. We'll do that. Anything else we need to touch on that?
I think one thing too that we had a lot of questions last year before hunting season, and now we're in December, so January is just around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
After January 1st, which is the last day of the season, you won't be able to place any bait. That could be corn, sweet potatoes, mineral blocks aren't supposed to be doing either. But you can't place any of that stuff basically to congregate or feed wildlife. If you have a bird feeder in your backyard where you're feeding some birds, that's a different thing.
Yeah.
But again, just placing, deer corn or potatoes or salt or mineral block, anything like that is prohibited until I think it's September 1st of next year. So basically from January 2nd of 2024 to September 1st of 2024, the feeding of wildlife is prohibited.
So as we're on the air today, most folks will have to understand that they don't need to be doing that now, period.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's critically important, because a lot of people think, well, I can do it, and if anybody says anything, I'm just doing it so I can look at the deer.
Mm-hmm.
Not a good excuse.
No, sir.
That's like saying, okay, I'm going to run 80 miles an hour just to see if my car's running right.
Yeah.
You're still going to get a ticket. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So I think that's important. I want to have time today to kind of segue into this whole idea of gun safety and how that relates to the Wildlife Commission. We hear so many cases of guns being used improperly, folks having children where they take a gun out in their home and end up somebody don't secure the gun in the home. But the Wildlife Commission looks at it in a much broader perspective. People that are out walking around their own property with a gun, it can become deadly, as you pointed out off air, Matthew, that we don't know what's beyond the wood line. Kind of explain why it's so critically important that maybe they go to a gun safety class.
Yeah, again, we teach the hunter safety classes, which has elements of gun safety in it. We teach those throughout the year free of charge. But, one thing, of course, when you have a firearm, you always want to make sure you point it in a safe direction. You don't want to point it at a person or anything like that. But then another factor is, always keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to fire. But then again, the last point is you always want to make sure you got a safe backdrop, especially as we were talking about earlier. You never know when you fire that rifle or shotgun if you don't have a safe backdrop and you don't know where that bullet or projectile is going. I mean, it may go through, okay, there's a little head of woods here. It may go through that head of woods and it may go on into somebody else's home or house or residence, or, the worst case scenario, it could hit someone. Mm-hmm. So that's why it's always important, when you're out hunting, even target shooting, it's important to make sure you have a safe backdrop to when you discharge your firearm. And as we talked about earlier off air, there was I think we were talking about yesterday, the Wildlife Commission actually did a press release about, I think this year there was like a 50% increase.
Yeah,
in,
it's a significant increase.
Yeah, a significant increase this year in the number of hunting fatalities related to discharging of firearms. So that's, one big thing we're focused on now is just making sure that everybody, when they're out hunting, they're discharging a firearm in a safe manner. And that's not always, me shooting someone else. It could be me, not properly handling a gun. And when I climbing up to the stand, I drop it and then, it discharges and I was to shoot myself. So again, it's not always just me shooting someone else. It could be me improperly handling a firearm, and it could cause injury or harm to myself.
Absolutely. And I don't really hear a lot of this being discussed on the media, but the Wildlife Commission has been doing this for years, offering safety, offering how you handle guns, offering courses in that. And you just don't, the public's going, well, where are we going to learn how to do that? Well, right there with
We've been offering these courses. I remember when I was a young boy, we came to Clinton and we took it over here at the old Public Works building. I think it was Wayne Hollowell.
Yep.
Yeah. He taught that class way back when, and I remember I was a young boy. So, it goes way back. That's 30 something years ago.
Absolutely.
So, we've been doing it a while, and probably predates that time period too.
Decades.
Yeah.
So let me kind of get this as we come into close here, try to make sure we're covering all the bases. Folks can reach out to you if they have questions. The other thing that strikes me as important, sometimes you'll hear people say, well, I don't need a hunting permit if I'm hunting on my own property. How do you look at that from your job? What is a person's own property, and is that a correct statement?
There are some facts to your statement there. Again, when they say it's our own property, it's something that you own. Your name is on the deed of the property. Right. Now, again, you own your property. You're able to hunt there, but there still are certain things you've got to do, like especially deer season right now. Even if I own my own property, I still have the report. I still have the tag and call or register my deer. That's a requirement that's still there. There's still things that, even though I'm hunting on my own property, that are illegal. You can't, even if I'm hunting on my own piece of land, I can't feed a bear a honey bun. Mm-hmm. There's different rules and regs that there are some facts to that as far as you don't correctly. Again, if you are the landowner or their child under the age of 18 who resides with them, you don't have to have a hunting license per se to hunt on your own land. But again, there are regulations and requirements as far as reporting animals. Again, the animals that we report are killed that you're required by law to report are deer and bear and wild turkey. So that's our 3 animals that you're required to report. Otherwise, you go by, again, you're hunting on your own land. Doesn't mean you can kill 100 deer on your own land. There is a limit. Our limit here in the eastern, it's statewide now. Our limit is 4 does and 2 bucks a year during deer season. So there's a limit set in place. That's for, biological purpose. We don't want to deplete our resource.
I think the thing with that is sometimes we get confused and we fudge or a little bit, should I say? Does that sound right? Reasonable, John Henry, on some of these kinds of observations? And then all of a sudden, one of you guys shows up and they're going, well, I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know it was, but what we're trying to do is get folks to say, let's find out first and then engage. And we're doing it opposite sometimes.
Yeah. I have a lot of people, and that's what they publish our phone numbers as public knowledge. Again, we'll have it on you're available for your viewers. But it's public knowledge, and people call me all the time. I'm from this community. I'm from this area. So people call my personal phone. They call my work phone.
And that's okay.
Yeah. And that's fine. And they call all the time, especially hunting season. And they're asking questions. I had a guy call me earlier today. Hey, I was wondering about hunting on game lands. Where can I go? What can I do? Explaining that to him. I have people call, and it's not always people calling to tell on people either. Mm-hmm. A lot of the stuff we have is just people calling for information. Hey, can I do this? A guy called me yesterday regarding chronic wasting disease. Hey, I want to take my deer meat to this processor in this county. Can I do it? And I explained, okay, yeah, if you do X, Y, and Z, you can do that. But again, we're here for information. We're not always here for enforcement. Mm-hmm. I would rather somebody call me and ask me a question, and I give them the correct information, and they don't break the law, and they go out there and have a good time with their family and their friends. Do that. I would a lot rather do that than have to write a ticket, and then they're mad at me and mad at the world and mad at everybody else.
Exactly. And they're looking somebody to blame.
That's right. Yes, sir.
But the reality is, we talked about this off air as well, is you guys are not the people that's creating the laws. The legislature does that, and the commission policies and those kinds of things. But yet you're there to enforce it, and they're electing the very people that make the law if they don't like it, but they end up blaming y'all about it.
Yeah. And again,
it's kind of crazy the way the system works, isn't it, John Henry?
Yes, sir.
The laws are set in place, and it's not just, we want to make this law for this, just because we can. The laws are made for safety and for, again, the biological standpoint of being able to protect the resource. So it's not just because we want to make that law. There's a reason for it.
And wild game, the meat for wild game, you mentioned something that's triggered a question here, and we got just a few seconds to get this in, but are there places that people can take bear or deer that they have legally shot and killed, and they'll actually process it for them?
Yep.
Really?
Yeah, there's a couple processors in Sampson. There's a couple in Bladen County. So there are processors, and one we were talking to earlier this week, we stopped by and talked to him, and all he does is he opens the first day of gun season and he closes 2 weeks into like January, and all he does is process deer and bear. That's it. He doesn't do any poultry,
wild turkey.
Yeah, he doesn't do anything else but deer and bear, and there's just that much of a volume coming in.
And so they can reach out to you guys with the numbers we're going to put on the screen.
Yes, sir.
And that way, if they don't know where it is or who it is, they can do that.
Yeah, there's probably too many to list.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean,
I never knew that. I never knew that there was just places.
There is a big demand for that this time of year. People are getting the meat turned into like hamburger. They add some fat to it. They make hamburger out of it. People make deer jerky. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff they do. Cube steak. I mean,
same thing with bear.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, same thing with bear.
You need to bring the processor on here and let him talk.
Exactly. I mean, they'd probably be glad to come on. And it's interesting. We live in that environment, and it's going on. And a lot of folks, I would say a lot of folks, I'm hoping I'm going to hear from folks, but a lot of folks may not know that. You just you harvested a deer. You're thinking, now what? I don't want to have to do all this. Can I carry it somewhere and get it done? I want to thank both of you for being with us. We're coming on closure. As we talked about, we're going to see your faces again, and say we're going to kind of do this maybe as a regular cycle where you can update us on laws and statutes as it relates to the Wildlife Commission. Yep. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Glad to be here.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us. We look forward to seeing you each and every week here as we do this show. And as always, before you leave, we want to say God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host J.W. Simmons. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion regarding this or any episode, please send your emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.